Welcome back to Simplifying the State, the podcast where we break down politics so you don't have to try to figure out why the Iranians are calling for a return to the monarchy. As always, I'm Adam Watson.
I'm Nicolas Perrin.
And I'm Drew Garfinkel.
All right, now before we start, if you would be so kind as to rate us and follow the podcast wherever you are listening, and to share it with anyone you think would enjoy it, like the cashier at Taco Bell. All right, so today's subject is going to be sort of... it's going to be connected mainly to Venezuela and, the recent stuff that's been going on there. But, also just sort of the implications this has for the world order. So, pretty light stuff. Okay, so I guess just to give everyone a rundown, since it was a little chaotic, on January 3rd, the United States did an operation where they captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. We also bombed the capital, Caracas. Maduro was then transferred to a U.S. Navy ship, the USS Iwo Jima, and he was then taken for arraignment in New York City. So that about sums up what happened. So what do you guys think about Trump's claim that we're going to be running Venezuela? Thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's very clear your thoughts on that based on the way you said that, Adam.
I don't know what you're talking about, Nicholas, but...
yeah, maybe a bit leading. But yeah, I see where you're going.
I have no idea what either of you are talking about, but, but what are your guys' thoughts on, the whole we're going to be running Venezuela thing?
It's not good looks, I don't think. For us to be, occupying a foreign country and then, quote unquote, running it, that doesn't reflect well on us.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like back to, what was it, 2021, 2022? I mean, that was only like 4 or 5 years ago, We were doing the same thing then. Why not do the same thing now?
Wait, what did we do in 2022?
I forgot when we pulled out of Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah, that was 2021. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of reminiscent of, 2003 going in under, shaky pretenses, taking over a country for its oil because, I mean, I don't know how many of you know this, but Venezuela has about 17% of the world's oil reserves. So, there's a lot of oil there. But I mean, in terms of production, they don't have a lot. I think they produced like a couple 100,000 barrels last year, which sounds like a lot, but in the global scale of the crude oil market, it's not that much, which, is one of the big reasons that people's gas prices will not be immediately affected by this because Venezuela has such a small impact on the global oil market. What do you think, Drew?
You're saying that there's a lot of untapped oil, right? That they're not producing a bunch, but the land itself has a bunch of oil, and as the U.S., we want it, right?
Yeah, so that seems to be what Trump was talking about because originally I think the idea was that we're going to capture Nicolas Maduro because, he was and this was the description that the administration gave him, narco-terrorist, and then, Trump came out and just said, basically, we're going to be taking over and controlling Venezuela and, we want their oil. And he had a big press conference with a bunch of oil executives. And I mean, it did not go great because the main takeaway seems to be that they do not want to invest heavily in Venezuela unless they can get concrete guarantees for security and for political stability, which are two things that would be very hard to guarantee in Venezuela. So yeah.
And
not going well.
Yeah.
And the crude oil in Venezuela would especially be good for the United States and less so other countries because the crude oil in Venezuela is very thick and viscous. I forgot the exact term of it. It was heavy. And the oil refineries in the United States, especially ones towards the south, are especially equipped to deal with that kind of oil just because that was kind of the oil that was prevalent in the United States. And not a whole lot of other countries have those kinds of refineries, so they won't be able to make use of it as much as the United States.
Right.
So I don't know a lot about oil. Is thick oil, is that good? Or is that just different?
It's
not harder
good
to refine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so generally it's better to have lighter oil. But since the U.S. is already equipped to deal with it, it would give them a strategic advantage over specifically Venezuela's oil reserves.
Yeah. Sort of moving away from the whole oil question, I'm wondering, what do you guys think this is going to mean for countries like Taiwan because, I mean, we went in, we violated a country's sovereignty, we captured their leader. And I mean, you can think that Maduro is a horrible, horrible person, which he is. I mean, he tortured his people, he collapsed the country, both economically and socially. Democratically, yeah, that's another big one. Horrible guy. But at the same time, I think we can agree that, violating another country's sovereignty and just sort of taking their leader sets a pretty bad precedent.
Yeah, it's kind of, the rules we set out is for thee, not for me sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
but I think
hypocritical.
it could also provide some soft security to other countries if we're willing to do operations like this in Venezuela. It could be like, I don't know, a scare tactic. That might also have been what it was intended to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what this could mean for China, because China is heavily invested in the rules-based international order. They've been slowly increasing their presence in that. And, the US is similarly intertwined in the international order. I'm wondering that, given the lack of criticism just on the fundamental ideas of the capture of Maduro, will this embolden China to go into Taiwan and, maybe take them, or, remove their government and install a friendly one? What do you guys think that could, do?
Well, we kind of been wagging our finger at like China, Russia, and then we turned around and did the same thing with Venezuela. So it's like what I was saying before, we're setting a precedent, a dangerous precedent. And while I think there'd be a lot of consequences to an invasion of Taiwan, I don't know if that will happen. Don't get me wrong, China could realistically wipe out Taiwan like tomorrow if they wanted to, but the global implications of that they wouldn't do it because of that, in my opinion.
Right.
I mean, I kind of push back against that. China will have the capabilities very soon, but for now they won't, because of the potential of damaging Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing, which China is not able to replace on their own. And they definitely won't be able to, support, get it from the United States, for example. And that would also crash the global economy and therefore China's economy, because China is a very export heavy nation. So they won't be able to do it yet, but potentially soon.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of talking about when I say that China is so interconnected. Like, if they were a completely isolationist country, no exports, no imports, they made everything themselves, they would not have to worry. But because, they've been gradually increasing their global presence since the late 90s, they're in a position where they sort of need to play ball when it comes to the rules-based order. But again, this brings me back to my concern. I mean, if we're just openly violating the UN Charter here and, violating a nation's sovereignty and bombing its capital and killing 40 of its citizens, I mean, what is that? What kind of signal is that going to send to other countries?
So have you guys heard about the potential, unproven, but testimony about sonic weapons used in Venezuela?
I have not.
Me neither.
Okay, well, basically, there was I think this might have been only one soldier from Venezuela. It could have been multiple, but he basically said that the United States used some sort of weapon that caused noses and ears to bleed, put people on the ground. And it was kind of his claim that that's part of how the US suffered no casualties during that operation. It's unproven, and the White House hasn't said anything about it as far as I'm aware, but I just thought it was helpful to point out, especially if we're worried about international law and the potential human rights discussion about sonic weapons.
Right. Yeah. I mean, until the Pentagon and the White House put out the full details of the operation, I think it's going to be pretty hard to tell what happened. But I mean, yeah, that could be an interesting point of discussion, later on down the road.
And I think what do you think is the constitutionality of this operation? Do you think it violates any US laws?
Yeah, so it looks like it probably was against the Constitution, and that's according to a couple of legal scholars from the Brennan Center. But the main reason it looks like it's unconstitutional is because he did not inform Congress about this operation beforehand, which he is supposed to do. And this was an offensive, not defensive action. That's another thing. And it just sort of looks like he violated the War Powers Act and went outside of his constitutional mandate, because the power to wage war is a Article 1 power, so it's the power of Congress, not of the president's. Yeah, it looks like it probably was unconstitutional, ignoring the fact that it was against international law.
What do you think the future of Venezuela would be? Like, do you really think there's going to be a democratic, transition period? Do you think the United States will supervise that? Do you think they'll even try to push for that?
Okay, well, here's what I think. So first of all, we did not get rid of Maduro's regime. We got rid of Maduro, and his oppressive regime is still in place. So I don't know what the whole point of that was. If it seems like it was just to grab Maduro and to just leave his regime in place. And I think the reason that is, and again, this is just all in my opinion, is because we want to be able to deal with, that government to be able to get the oil rights and to be able to set up U.S. oil companies in Venezuela. As for a democratic transition, it's hard to say because Trump discredited the leader of the Venezuelan opposition, saying she doesn't have the respect of the people. So I think that might be, tricky to tell. I mean, there might be an election, there might not be. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, when you have things like this, like with Libya, like with Iraq, it's always hard to tell in the first couple of weeks how it's going to play out, because in the first couple of days, first week or two of those operations, it looked like we had, it was a terrific success, all that stuff. And then Iraq collapsed, and then, Libya collapsed. And, it's always hard to tell long term what's going to happen in the first couple of weeks. But, that's what I will have to say. I think it's way too early to tell what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I would like for there to be a transition, but, it's hard to say.
That's kind of what I was thinking, that it's kind of too soon to call. That happened like a week ago, a little bit more than a week ago. So to see the impacts of that, we'll have to wait a bit. But now I'm going to be hopeful here. I think this could be good for Venezuela because, Maduro, he was an awful guy, awful dictator. So if the U.S. plays it right, I'm hoping that things can go well for Venezuela.
Yeah, and I think not really, rhetoric isn't the right word to use here, but the talk of the United States turning the Venezuelan vice president, into kind of a puppet ruler could be a good thing short term in the hopes of democratic restoration.
Mm-hmm.
But I do worry that it's just going to become, play for the oil at the end of the day.
All right. Thanks for listening to Simplifying the State. We'll be back next week with our next episode. Make sure to follow us on Spotify. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening to this, and Instagram. And we'll see you guys next time.